China has withdrawn its troops and dismantled its tents at the Daulat Beg Oldie. Simultaneous withdrawals have taken place by the Chinese and Indian troops. Remember, this was a flashpoint, a face-off really between the two countries, also jeopardizing the visit of Salman Khurshid to China and also the visit of the Chinese premier that is slated for later this month around the 20th of May. Shiv Arur, our deputy editor, is now joining us with more details. Shiv, who was it who was in touch with the other side who could finally manage to get the situation under control?
I'm told by my sources in the army, Maha, that it was a completely diplomatic thaw that actually happened. Now, the exact modalities of this mutual withdrawal or pullout are not known at this point. But what we can confirm is that somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30 this evening, the pullback was actually effected and complete, which means that those 5 tents that were set up by the Chinese on April the 14th to 15th, the intervening night of April the 14th to 15th in the Depsang plain of Daulat Beg Oldie in subsector north of Ladakh, has been completely withdrawn, and they've moved back across the line of actual control. More importantly, now the question needs to be asked, Maha, about whether the Indian side has also had to agree or commit to move back to a certain place, which effectively means withdrawing on our own territory. Now, all of this is a little fuzzy at this point. What I'm told by my sources is that the Ministry of External Affairs will be issuing a formal statement of some kind tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. This of course is from our sources. The army is not speaking specifically about it because, as you know yourself very well, Maha, the Ministry of External Affairs has been controlling this entire situation, controlling the discourse and the discussions on this situation, and therefore the army has not found it fit to comment formally on it at this stage. But the questions are, of course, where are the army positions right now? More importantly, where are the ITBP positions right now? And if I may just add one editorial point, Maha, at the end of the day, while this is definitely a breakthrough and an important one for India, let's never forget that for 21 days, India's policy as far as this issue is concerned has pretty much been exposed, and for 21 days, India has been projected nearly as weak, and I think China is going to be having the last laugh on this one.
In fact, Shiv, let's put that question to defense expert Brigadier Arun Sehgal. Brigadier Sehgal, should we read this as a face saver for India or at least a victory for its diplomacy?
I think the compromise was on the card after the fact that the Chinese are clever enough to understand that a standoff with India at this particular juncture was not in their best interest. It is a victory for both diplomacy as well as also our resolute stand by ensuring that we were continuing the standoff with the Chinese.
Brigadier Sehgal, this was necessary because there were very important meetings that were to take place. The foreign minister was supposed to travel to Beijing. The new Chinese premier was supposed to visit India. Now, do you think that everything was being done at war footing to get the situation under control?
I think this was absolutely necessary given the fact that India is an important partner in the Chinese economic integration, and the fact that India is now economically linked up with the Chinese political leaderships are concerned by the fact that this could have led to a situation where India would have walked into the American camp. So Chinese would have ensured that they were keen that the standoff was diffused as early as possible. I think we should look at it as a victory for both Sino-Indian relations and a compromise which will ensure the stability and peace along the line of actual control.
Brigadier Sehgal, this is Shiv Arur here asking the question. Apart from the fact that this is, mutually beneficial to both countries as diplomacy needs to continue, isn't it also a fact, Brigadier, that for 21 days, India has been, painted in pretty poor light as far as this incursion is concerned, and to our neighbors and in the international community, India has been, projected pretty much as the victim who simply couldn't fight back.
I am afraid I am not in full agreement with what you say. My understanding is that while Delhi may have indicated a certain amount of stand, but on the ground there was a full-scale resoluteness to ensure that the standoff will continue and India will not budge. And number one. Number two, I think it is important to understand that India has also established a certain degree of perception above the line of actual control and the limits of Chinese so-called green line, which is Chinese green, to consider it to be that their areas of control. So I think overall we should not look at it in terms of any kind of a weak attitude by the government or by the armed forces. It should be seen as a calibrated stand working towards a compromise which is a win-win for both sides.
Brigadier Sehgal, permit me to say this, but you're being pretty diplomatic about this because at the end of the day, and we've heard this from our sources within the army itself, that there's been pretty much of a disconnect in the manner in which the army wanted to sort this out, not resorting to full war or being belligerent or escalating the situation, but there were measures that were proposed by the army that could have put India in a position of strength. Now with China finally agreeing to this withdrawal, India's in no position of strength. India might have to, we don't know the modalities of the withdrawal itself, but India is definitely not in position of strength. Wouldn't you concede that at least?
Look, I am whatever you are aware of, I am more than aware of what you are aware of. But the fact of the matter is that escalation in that area may have looked very savvy at that particular point in time, but that escalation would have led to a further escalation. So the question at the end of the day is, are we ready for that further escalation, or we want to diffuse the situation and also, let me put it this way, to buy time for India to ensure that it builds up its credible capabilities in this region as we are trying to do now. So I think on the balance, the timing was perhaps not to our favor. And I think
we also have with us Lieutenant General Ravi Sani, former Director General of Military Intelligence, is with us. General Sani, what is your assessment? 21 days later, an agreement of some kind has been reached. The Chinese have withdrawn, but it's taken 21 days to actually get here. Are we in a position of strength as far as the Chinese are concerned, General Sani?
You see, basically it will be very difficult to comment on this particular thing. But I want to tell you, such things have happened earlier also, when there was a standoff. Yes. And the thing is to continue not to blink. You see, that's very important, because I don't want to go into the state of preparedness on both sides, because that is a very long subject. But I can also tell you that we are not a pushover. So at a certain stage, you see, when you take a stand, you have to, you have to continue to not blink. And that's what has paid us dividends, I would say. Because today I will not be able to comment and tell you that who is superior and who is inferior. Because that is something which requires discussion at a later stage and at length. But the point is, I think in the end of the day, I would say that it was left to the army to sort out, of course with the diplomatic, process which must have gone at full gear. And probably the messages which were required to be conveyed to the Chinese side have been conveyed. And ultimately, in the end of the day, prudence has somehow become the correct sort of a thing to follow, both sides. And I think that's what it is. And we should discuss this later on, but not at the heat of the moment.